be an illustrator if you're new here. This video today was going to be a bit of a Q&A / draw with me video, but as the questions came in, they kind of had a little bit of a theme, which was all about inspiration, where to find it, how to keep it, how it influences our style, and how it changes our artistic path. So I'm going to jump in and talk a little bit about my experience with inspiration as an illustrator and artist, and I'm just going to draw some pictures while we're talking. Hope you enjoy. So to start off with, I thought I'd talk about where we find inspiration. And of course, in the most general sense, we can say it comes from life. As creatives, we mostly are just processing the world around us and kind of interpreting it in our work. So whatever's going on around us is invariably influencing and informing and inspiring what we're creating. But if you want to look at it in a more specific or idiosyncratic way, inspiration comes from things around us that are specific to our lives or unique or individual to our lives. So for me, that looks like nature and the natural world, Australian bushland, rural culture. I live on a farm on the Australian east coast, so I get a lot of coastal influence, so I spend a lot of time at the beach and by the sea, but we also live on a farm, so I'm influenced a lot by that lifestyle. And I think it's really important that we acknowledge that the things that are unique about our life and the things that we find uniquely inspiring are the things that make our work unique as well. So we draw from those experiences that are innately ours and no one else has exactly the same experience, and that's what makes our work so special. The other thing about inspiration is it has an aspirational element. So in looking at what inspires us, we're also examining our own identity, who we think we are and who we want to be, which I think is a really interesting part of it all. When you think about what inspires you and you think about how you see yourself or how you want to see yourself, and you can see those things line up, because what inspires us talks directly to our ideas about who we are and who we want to be. So for me personally, if we're looking at inspiration as a kind of aspirational idea, I'm thinking about myself as someone who's connected to and communes with our place in the natural world, and who's sensitive to our hugely unusual role as these kind of sentient animals who are doing largely a poor job of being custodians of the earth and human consciousness. So that's pretty aspirational. It's a pretty lofty idea that I'm sort of thinking about. So that's where we see some of the big and heavy themes come into my work when I'm thinking about stuff on that level, which is kind of a big philosophical level. But you know, there's smaller levels. I also take aspirational inspiration as a creator and admirer of just beautiful things, just an appreciator of magic, someone who's grateful for all the mundane and often overlooked wonders in our world. So that comes out in the really simple and obvious, the kind of aesthetic elements, going for beautiful colors, drawing flowers, things that are simple and beautiful. I also see myself as an observer and documentarian of human stories and ideas and movements. So this is where something like mass culture comes in as an inspiration in my work. I definitely see this in the way that I take inspiration from t-shirt graphics, from psychedelic era posters, comic books, tattoos, graphic design from the 70s, like anything, like, you know, old beer cans. Anything that it's not necessarily of high value, but is part of the human story or is important to the human story. So we can take inspiration from anywhere. So it can be from way up high. Those really lofty philosophical ideas can be inspiring your work, but also so can just the wrapper on your takeaway food or whatever, something that seems to be the cheapest of human creation, that can also inspire your work too, because it's all part of the human story. And it just depends on how you frame it and how you look at what's inspiring your work. So another question that came in was what artists inspire me, which is always a really hard one because I forget. I find it really difficult to sit down and remember all the artists who I've felt inspired by over my career and my work as an artist, and just even on the spot right now. There's a lot of contemporaries that I love and I'm very inspired by the work that they're putting out. I find it hard to remember. Go look at who I follow on Instagram. That would probably be the best place to find who inspires my work. There's so many. Anyway, that said, it's also kind of weird being inspired by other artists. Some of the ones that I'm about to mention, you will notice specific imagery or styles that they've obviously influenced in my work, but there's some who I just love and admire and feel inspired when I see their work, but I will never ever produce work like they do. One, I don't have the discipline, and two, I don't want to.
They're already doing it, in my mind, the best that it can be done, and I want to do things my way. But that doesn't mean that I'm not inspired by seeing hugely, I'm thinking of Mark Maggiore right now, hugely technically talented artists who capture something that I could never ever imagine myself being able to do. But I still find it inspiring because I guess it shows you what's possible for us to do, and also it does say a lot about the sharing of stories. Anyway, I'm going to get into it. Some of the artists I love most. Georgia O'Keeffe probably comes in number one for me. Everyone knows I love a cow skull. They're on this page too. Yeah, God, her work's just beautiful. It really is. It's beautiful, it's moving, it's also got a little bit of darkness, but also a lot of levity. She's probably, yeah, one of my favourite artists ever. I will talk about the Western artists that I was just saying, Mark Maggiore. Beautiful artworks. In the same vein is Teal Coat Blake. Really, just love a good bucking horse, and he does them the best. Larry Butte is another Western illustrator. They all capture movement really beautifully, which is something that inspires me, and also lots of horses. Love a good horse drawing. Off on another tangent, a big art movement that has inspired my work all along my creative journey, still does to this day, is poster art and t-shirt graphics for bands, that kind of stuff. It started out as always being fascinated by the psychedelic LP art and the poster art that went along with that movement. So that's guys like Wes Wilson, Victor Moscoso, Alton Kelly, Martin Sharp, Stanley Mouse. They probably had the biggest influence on my drawing style, was psychedelic and almost like crossing over a little bit into that comic booky style. You see that a bit in Stanley Mouse and Martin Sharp's work, probably more than the others. And that also comes up in the Armadillo World Headquarters, the artists like Mikhail Priest and Jim Franklin. And they also sort of cross over a little bit westerny, a little bit country and western. So yeah, all those guys, their graphic style really influenced the way I like to stylize my work. I mean, that said, I'm also heavily influenced by the cartoons that I watched growing up, comic books, things like that. So draw a lot of inspiration from there. That's a lot of stylistic inspiration. I should also mention tattoo artists in general. That's where I draw a lot of inspiration from. I've always loved the idea of things that are a little bit dark, but also beautiful. I think tattooists and the tattoo culture, a lot of the time captures that really well as something that's tough but beautiful. I personally don't have any tattoos, but I do love their art. I'll say a couple of specific tattoo artists, Australian ones. Millie from Rock of Ages in Lennox Head is one of the most beautiful artists. And Brittany Kilsby from Devil's Blush, I think she's down in Victoria. They capture a lot of Australian elements in their artwork, and yeah, the stylization is just perfect to me. Love it so much. So there's so much to draw inspiration from among our contemporaries and recent contemporary artists. I don't really go that much into fine art. I just didn't go to art school. I didn't study. And I guess, yeah, what inspires me is graphic art rather than fine art or conceptual art. I just don't really have the brains for it and never really felt like I did. Didn't ever really feel like I would fit into the contemporary art world, so I just don't look too deep into it. I would rather look at things that are more graphics based, that are more about the visual, the aesthetic, and combine that with inspiration that comes from the real world, the natural world, from us as humans, from the things that interest us. So that's where I go looking. So I guess the main takeaway when we're talking about inspiration is that the unique quality of our inspiration and the sources that we take inspiration from feeds directly into making our own work unique. So if you're inspired by certain subjects that you see in your everyday life, they're not going to be the same ones that everybody else sees. And if you're inspired by these really specific predilections that you have, just the things that you love because you love them, those things feed into making your work unique as well, because no one has the exact same taste as you. So no one else is going to be interested in that exact same set of things that you find beautiful and important and inspiring. We need to honour those things because they're the things that make our work unique and drive us to create something new and bring something new into the world. And ultimately that makes us a new voice for the world, which is special and important. So if you want to talk quite simply about where would I look for inspiration, I've sort of said already you can go as big and general as you like, which is just say life, everywhere, all around you. But if you want sort of a more specific directive, I would say go outside, look at your environment, see if you can find something that you think, wow. Or if you see something that you think, not wow, but how can I make this important? And if you can't find anything in your immediate environment, I guess go looking for the thing that lights you up, that is so interesting to you or so beautiful or so important. You know, it's different for everybody. It could be something as simple as a certain kind of flower or a breed of chicken. I don't know. Everyone is so unique in the things that fascinate them, you know. And I think sometimes too, if we're lost for where we could find inspiration, we look to our childhood is probably a good place too, because the things that fascinated us as a kid are probably our really genuine and sort of unaffected interests. They're the things that we just found fascinating without any self-consciousness about it. And we can always go back to them. And I know I do, like that's exactly where the drawing of horses, which I basically do for a living now, that's something that I've had since I was a kid. Also fascination with seashells, insects, animals, nature. That's all things that I've carried since I was a kid. And I sort of went away from that a bit when I was probably a teenager in my early 20s, when I was just trying to be too cool. And then I kind of returned to it as I got older, and that joy was still there. I still find all those things so inspiring. So in listing all those things, and especially the artists or the art movements that inspired my work, you can see how it feeds into creating your style or developing your style as an artist. So if you're just starting out and you're trying to figure out how to create, how you want your work to look, then thinking about those things that inspire you and pulling them all together into something new, I think that's the way that we develop a new style, and that's how inspiration affects our creative journey or changes our artistic path even. You know, like I said, I never saw myself as a conceptual artist or as a high artist, so I never pursued that kind of career because my interest and my inspirations, I found them all in pop culture. So I just didn't ever really see that I would be going the way of trying to get into galleries or even go to art school or learn classic techniques. And so that's how the things that inspired me changed my journey as an artist. And I think it's really cool to be open to that and aware of that, and just know that there is a space for everybody. You can be a different style, you can find your spot. I think the most important thing of all is that we see all the unique parts that make up what interests us and what we think is worth highlighting and recording and putting down on paper or whatever our medium might be, and embracing that as our own unique inspiration. Anyway, that's probably about all I have to say on that. I am a little bit sleep deprived. I don't know if any of that made sense or if I've just gone round and round and round in circles. I feel like I'm going around in circles. Thank you for tuning in. I hope that you found this interesting or helpful. Feel free to drop comments below if you have any questions or anything you'd like me to talk about in the future, or if you just want to join the discussion about what inspires you, the importance of inspiration in creating our style and our journey. I'd love to hear from you.